Professor Brené Brown's research shows that vulnerability fosters good emotional and mental health. It is a sign of courage. We become more resilient and brave when we embrace who we truly are and what we are feeling. The Vulnerable Scientist podcast is a space for scientists to tell their honest and authentic stories. I am your host, Sarah Nyakeri, who happens to be a scientist, informal science communicator, and I help scientists create personal websites. If you want to support this show, go to www.patreon.com/thevulnerable-scientist. You can also follow this podcast on all social media platforms at TV Scientist Pod. Tell anyone who's listening more about yourself in terms of the things that you do that have nothing to do with H3 Biomed, your PhD, all the other responsibilities that have to do with science that you're doing. Tell us the things that are not science related, your hobbies, anything. Tell us.
So for me, unfortunately, because I have been working and studying for such a long time, I haven't had to have very many hobbies.
Wait, but one thing, how long is long?
Maybe 13 or 14 years now already, altogether.
Since that's from undergraduate, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, let me interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
When I wanted to do my master's, I was trying to see, if I do my master's, I might want to do my PhD probably, but I want to see how's the journey like for other people. So I went on LinkedIn. I have a habit for collecting data, which is really weird. So I went on LinkedIn, checked everybody who has a PhD or who's in a comfortable, according to my view, in a comfortable position in the science field, and trying to check when did they start their university education. And I didn't find anyone who had less than 10 years.
Oh, really? That's quite interesting.
Like, you'll see that's where it ranges or more.
That makes me feel a little bit better.
It's just something I remembered. I was like, we don't really appreciate how long it takes for someone to actually be seen, like to just get that doctorate. We don't see how long it takes. Like, you don't see how long it takes for a scientist. I don't know if you've listened to Afra's interview. You've listened to Afra's interview?
I think I have, yeah.
Yeah, she started her education with her brother, but her brother went into industry immediately after her bachelor's, and how she went into academia, and she's now just gotten out of her PhD and going to a postdoc and trying to find her footing. So I was trying to see, that's more than 10 years, I don't know, around 10 years. And you can see this is someone who's also trying to find her footing now into the job market. And this is someone who's been, the other person, same course, but chose a different path and is doing very well. And like, when I see scientists, I wonder, and look at what how long it takes for them to actually get that doctorate, that red gown, and actually find a footing in the academic world, especially the academic world. Trying to find a footing and growing, it takes such a long time. And we don't see that. People are not shown that, and it's good we talk about it.
Yeah, people don't very often see all the struggle either, and I think a lot of people see, like, I've actually noticed that even with myself, people will hear, you're doing your PhD and whatever, and they'll just assume like, you're just so smart and you've just got things, going for you, and that's often not the case. It's usually the complete opposite. You're usually like a complete mess, and you don't feel that way at all, but I've noticed how differently other people perceive you as well, especially people outside of science. I think in science it's easy to to still feel like, like a small dog, no matter how much you accomplish. But outside of academia, when you talk to people and you tell them about what you do, they are just like, oh, wow, like you must be so intelligent, you must be so smart. And they kind of make the silent assumption that, you've kind of just always had things going good for you and you've had all these opportunities when sometimes you've really not. And it's been very difficult. So I also always like to hear about it. I like to hear that, people's journeys weren't that straightforward, because you always often see people advertising, obviously, the good times, the wins, but you never see them talk about the lows and the bad times. And I guess I understand
especially when they're happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you're telling us about your hobbies. You said that you spend so much time in education. So does that mean that you don't have hobbies?
I don't have many hobbies, but one thing I did decide to do was to actually start to make a bucket list. And so what I'd like to do is to do at least 2 things on my bucket list every single year for the next few years.
Tell us the bucket list.
No, so there's lots of random things on there, to be fairly honest. So just things that I've been wanting to do throughout my life that I've just never gotten to do. So things like I want to learn to play the guitar. I really want to learn some type of martial arts, and I've been leaning towards like Japanese sword fighting or something like not so popular. I have been diving for a while, but I've never ever gotten any dive qualifications. And so I'd really like to actually get certified. And so that's both an academic aspiration, but also a bucket list item, personal thing that I'd like to do. And so as part of that, one of my bucket list things is to go diving in as many oceans as I can across the world. So if ever I travel going forward, and whenever I travel, if I get the opportunity to do, I'm going to make a plan to dive. It doesn't matter where I am, what country. If I'm landlocked, I'll go dive in the river. So I've got those little things. Those. It's really bucket listy, type things. And some of them are smaller, like actually learn to cook properly.
What do you mean properly?
Like I can't cook to save my life. Like
what?
I'm so bad at like cooking. So I'd really like to learn to cook properly, and like those little things that I've just not done well in my life.
That sounds like me.
So I've got all these things that maybe also I just have been too busy to do, but I've decided that no matter how busy I am, I'm going to try and do a couple of these things every year. Even if it's just 1 or 2, I'm going to do 1 or 2 of those things and if it's like something that could become a hobby, it's going to become a hobby, and I'll see if I can kind of keep doing it. And so I've really been looking around at all the things that I can just do right here in Cape Town, and there's so many things that I can even do just here that I've been wanting to do. So I'll definitely try and do at least a few things this year.
Okay. So that means that you haven't done. Okay, so what do you do when you're not working?
So I do like to go hiking. I do enjoy a good hike. And then I do a little bit of free diving. I haven't done it that much, in the last few years, because I also had a couple of really bad knee injuries and I had surgery, and I went through rehabilitation for that. And so that took me away from diving for a really long time. And then COVID hit, and then I couldn't go to the beach because it was on lockdown. And so there was like all these things that that was really my happy place. And so that impacted me like mentally a lot as well, because I just couldn't get there. And so that was really hard. And I've decided that this year I just want to get back into a lot of that. I want to start, just doing a lot of my free diving again. If I can, like start fishing again, I'd like to do that as well this year. But I'd like to just start to pick up a couple of those hobbies that I've lost and I've dropped in. Like I used to read a lot, but then I haven't even been reading that much. So I'd just like to start reading again, like those really basic things that I've kind of lost along the way, or just, I guess I didn't prioritize, but I maybe should have. So it's really, for me, in this next few years, it's really picking back up on just life, being a human. And having hobbies and interests and likes like a regular person.
Yeah. What kind of stuff were you reading?
So I like a lot of fiction, a lot of science fiction, that I like to read, but a lot of fiction. So I really I mean, a lot of people will have a lot to say about this, but I like Dan Brown. And so I like his style of writing, and I like Stephen King. And then also, I'm really a big fan, of J.R. Tolkien. So I like the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion, so like that whole series. But I like a lot of science fiction, but I also like a lot of self-help books, actually. Oh, I can't believe I'm admitting this. But I like to read self-help books. So I actually, that's probably some of the most books that I've read. So just books on like spirituality or, things like anything that can just help with like self-improvement and whatever. And I've also read a lot of like relationship type books, so like, like Think Like a Man and Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. I've like read all of those like little classic like
okay,
self-help books, which was quite interesting. Because I always find it interesting to read about like the human psyche and how different people perceive it and how different writers perceive it. Because whenever you read any of these books, like a lot of the time the advice that they swear by is so contradictory as well. So it's so interesting to see how different people perceive different things as well. And I think that's what I like about it. So I want to pick up a lot of reading again this year, I think.
Tell me more about hiking.
So I don't hike too much at the moment. And since my knee injuries, obviously what I've been able to do is very, very limited. And so I recently went on just a very, very short hike. Just a little mountain hike here in Cape Town. And I actually struggled a little bit, and I never used to struggle when I hiked, and that was shocking. So I actually realized that I have to start with really short, small trails, and then work my way, to the longer trails again. So it was a bit disappointing because I used to love hiking, and there were so many trails around, like Cape Town especially, that I wanted to do. But they are quite intense. There's a few that's like 8 or 9 hour hikes, and it takes like an entire day. So I'm definitely not ready for those. So what I would like to do is just hike a little bit more, every month, do a few trails and do a little bit harder, do ones that are a little bit more difficult all the time till I can get there. But it's gonna take me a while, I must say. My knees are not in great shape.
Okay, so I see that you love hiking despite your current condition. Why did you start hiking? What do you gain from hiking? Why hike? Why are you trying to see that you can get back to hiking? Why is it important?
So for me, it's just, I don't feel, how can I say? I don't feel like I recharge in terms of like my energy. Unless I'm outdoors, I don't do well inside of any type of concrete. The concrete jungle does nothing for you, but the real jungle will rejuvenate you for life. I really believe that. Like, it's just a really rejuvenating experience. And I think that when you're out in nature doing really anything in nature, you tend to forget about everything else that we prioritize as humans. So, you just forget everything. You forget the whole materialistic system that we're all just kind of making our way through. And it's just like, it's such a primal feeling. Like, and in many ways you kind of feel like this is really where we are supposed to be. We're not supposed to be in four walls all the time, looking at concrete, in and amongst all these dead things, these inanimate things. And when you're in nature, you just feel that's like so much more. You just feel like you're recharging, your energy, your soul is recharging. And I don't get that feeling anywhere else. I get it when I go hiking, and I get it when I go diving, and I don't really get it anywhere else. You get fulfilled with other things in your life in different ways, but there's just that like primal, like spiritual like fulfillment that you get. I don't know, that when you're out in nature, and it's just so, you have so much time with yourself and time with your thoughts as well. And there's just something about walking and thinking that just makes you think differently and a lot more clear.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. So, for someone who doesn't know, this is actually a very late night call. And before this, you're telling me that you've had a busy day, and we've had a very long conversation.
Yes, we did. I'm actually looking at the time, and it's been like more than 2 hours.
And I'm just wondering, how do you genuinely feel after having this conversation?
I actually feel really good. It relieved in a way, because I don't speak about this all that often, to be fairly honest. I think we have a tendency to listen to other people's, journeys and stories and problems, but you don't always get to talk about yours. And I feel really good about it. And one thing I really like about these podcasts is that it is very honest, and it's really called The Vulnerable Scientist for a reason. And what I really also like is that it's really, it's our journey in our words, and we get to say what we feel the way we want to say it. And I think that's very important, because there's nothing worse than somebody twisting your story or making it something that it's not. And so I've quite enjoyed this as well, because I've also just gotten to be honest. And I've thought a lot throughout this conversation as well. I had a couple of like, oh, okay, now that I'm thinking about it, no, I'm actually thinking about it a little bit differently. And yeah, it's been really nice going through the journey again. Like, it's been a long one, actually.
Thanks for sharing your journey. I loved this conversation. Actually,
I really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to tell or to put out there that I didn't ask?
No, not really. But I think one thing that I would like to say is that always, 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 always be stubborn enough to fail forward. Always be stubborn enough to not succumb to your circumstances or your difficulties, and always be stubborn enough to excel. But more than anything, leave a path that is better for whoever comes behind you. I think that's very important in life, is to pave a better way. And I think that even if you accomplish nothing in life, but you make it a little bit easier for the person who comes next, I think it's a wonderful legacy to leave. And I think that if more of us think about our journeys within that context, we'd find a lot more fulfillment a lot faster, because we'll be focusing on making impactful change, that will impact generations to come, hopefully, and a lot of people very directly. And so that's always what I like to tell people, is that, when you leave a legacy, it doesn't have to be this notoriable legacy that the whole world knows about. Your legacy can just be making it easier for the next person. And that's very much what I want my legacy to be, is to make the journey or the road just a little bit less bumpy than it was for me. And I hope that a lot more people are able to do that as well within their settings, to, be the voice of change, to stand up, and to just be strong enough, to try and make the road a little bit better for everybody who's going to come behind you.